It's just enough knowledge to be dangerous, but not smart. I've seen this before.
Yeah.
And every time I see it, I have the same response. So like, makes you really think how much people don't know. I think it's ingenious. I think the concept, someone thought about that and I was like, I have an idea. Hey, let me see your floaties. Let me see your flip-flops, man. This will float.
We need a hot plate in the center of the pool. That's where we want the bar at. So
What is it they have plugged into that?
I think it's a hot plate.
Oh, they've got the outdoor electric grill. So they got the bar set up. I really, really hope this is just for a video purpose. I hope that's not for real. At a loss for words that a human being would think that would be okay. I mean, here's the reality. You splash this, it's GFI protected, it's gonna trip and it's gonna protect them, hopefully, as long as they have a properly functioning GFCI. Non-GFI protected, one little wave splashes in there, body of water. These guys are cooked. The journeyman electricians are gonna understand this. Unstoppable force here, the tester that they have here, that actually would work. We've done stuff like that. When you're at a job and you need to figure out a circuit and you don't know what it is, we would sort it out when we go back into the 80s and 90s. They didn't have the testers they have today, and the circuit tracers, they weren't really that great.
Yeah.
So this is how we did it too. Sometimes we would just take the wires in the box and just tie them together, turn the breakers on until one trips, and we knew that that was the circuit. It's the same concept. Now the breaker type, that's funny, where you got the piece of copper wire tying the breaker, because obviously they had a problem with the 20 amp breaker. It was tripping. And someone said, hey, I got a solution for that. Either that or an electrician put this in here and said, this is hilarious.
Yeah.
But I think people do think like this. Hey, this thing's tripping, man. Let's go ahead and keep it from tripping. I got a piece of wire, I'll tie it to the screw, and this thing won't trip anymore.
You see people with taped on breakers, you got duct tape or something, trying to hold it in the on position.
Yeah.
Not understanding that breaker tripping is indicating to you that something's wrong in your system. We should find out what's wrong.
It is thinking outside the box. But if you have a breaker that's tripping regularly, you have to have a qualified person take a look at it. The job of that breaker is to protect the wiring of your home. And if it's tripping for whatever reason, it needs to be diagnosed to make sure that the wiring in the house is safe and it's not doing its job. If you're trying to prevent a breaker from doing its job, you could be putting your home in danger.
This one is obviously a joke. Both of these solutions could be very, very dangerous for your home.
It falls in the category of misuse of extension cords. It's not what they're there for. You can put a few of these together. They're intended to, but they're not intended to put a dozen of them together.
Good thing about these old systems is a lot of these have a fuse inside. More than likely going to blow your first fuse there.
Exactly. I've seen this in real life where homeowners have done this, stripped wire, bend it over, flatten it out, and put the wire in the actual receptacle and tape it up. And usually by the time they call an electrician, they call us because it's a potential fire or maybe has become a fire. So don't do this. Don't do this.
What's funny is I saw this one online when I was researching these, and I immediately thought back to a job we had a couple of years ago where someone had done exactly this. Do you remember that job? Whoever did their work was running their garage door opener and some garage circuits off some Romex that they bought, and that's exactly how they made their connection. It actually caught on fire and it melted that plug into nothing.
I've actually gone to houses that don't have a doorbell button and the wires are sitting there, and I've actually touched them together and it's ringing the doorbell, and the people have actually answered the door. They go, how did you do that? Our doorbell's not working. We don't even have a button. And I go, just touch the wires together. There's no danger here. It's low voltage, but it is a little hilarious. Kind of ingenious. I don't know how many people walk up to that door and understood it. Button broke, took it off, found out it worked, didn't have time to get a doorbell button. That's someone thinking outside the box.
Landlord did not want to pay for the new doorbell, so he just said, hey, it still works. Ding dong. We have a lot of landlords in our customer base that we do all their electrical work, and they're all fantastic.
Yeah.
They understand the value, the safety.
They take very good care of their properties.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to call this the Grandma Blaster 3000. In my mind, this is another one of those things that it absolutely has to be a joke.
How many people were out there going, hey, that's a great idea. My cords are always hanging there. I'll just make a little contraption like this and plug it in. The minute you plug that in, you're going to have an explosion in your face, and it's not going to be fun. So don't do that.
Yeah. If you have a failing circuit breaker that for some reason, because circuit breakers fail in one of two ways. They either trip and never reset, or they never trip.
Yeah.
And if you have this happenstance, you plug this in and your circuit breaker doesn't trip, you think everything's fine. You're cooking the wires in your walls. You're heating everything up way past what it's rated for. Very, very dangerous situation.
This could be a couple things. Somebody's joking around, apprentice messing around, sending pictures to their friends. Cover plate like this is designed to protect people put their fingers inside the junction box where there's live electricity.
Yeah.
Is it ugly? Is it right?
I didn't actually think about that. I thought it was just Joe Schmo being really dumb. But if you're working on a house and you don't want to put on your good plates yet, let's say that they're going to paint soon, so you don't want to put on your brand new plates, you put on this, you can't forget about that.
Right.
You know, that's something you can't just ignore. That's ugly as hell. You're not going to be able to not replace that when you're done.
I've seen guys put tape over it just to make sure it's safe, or they tape up the switches. There's a lot of different ways to make it safe. I mean, it works. It keeps your fingers from going into the plug. It's not pretty. You can tell it's an older house, older box. They have old ivory switches. These are older switches, so they're doing something around there, or someone was just being funny. But it is cute. It kind of looks like a deck of cards. I think I remember this one. I think homeowner changed out some of the receptacles doing a DIY project, turned the circuit breakers back on, and they had the circuit breakers were tripping, and they couldn't figure out why. So what happened? Maybe him and his buddy, or her and her friend, are changing their receptacles in their house, and they had one that they mistakenly wired wrong. We went over there, pulled the plug out, and we went, oh, okay, you've got it wired incorrectly, and we probably fixed it. But that's what happens when a circuit breaker doesn't trip and it just keeps cooking. It will burn. This is probably an EV charger without an EV charging rated receptacle. So this looks like a 50 amp receptacle for a 240 volt EV charger, and it's probably not rated for that. And when EV chargers came out, they didn't realize that the standard 50 amp 240 volt plug was not going to handle the continuous use of an EV charger. They're rated for ovens and dryers and big appliances that run for short periods of time. Everything we have today is electrical, and it's taken for granted. These are great to remind us that we need to do things right.
Now we have special plugs that are EV rated to take 10 hours of continuous use at their max rating of 55 amps.
Exactly.
They're designed for it.
Yep. So for our viewers out there that are getting EV chargers put in, make sure your electrician is using the proper equipment for the job. If you have an EV charger put in there, they make specific receptacles that are intended to run for the duration of the charger. Sometimes people go with the lowest price. Make sure the lowest price is using the proper equipment, because that's a great way to save money by putting the wrong equipment in there. A standard receptacle like this could run you about 10 bucks. EV rated receptacle can run you anywhere from $60 to $100. So big difference on that part. Right parts matter. If you don't have the right equipment, it can be very dangerous.
Got this one on Reddit. I found the forum for it. Contractor is adding a sub panel, and they turn on the sub feed breaker and it trips right away, and they don't know what's wrong.
I really believe in handymen. They're a great trade, and I think they're very, very talented in a lot of what they do. And I don't know if this was a handyman, but we run into this all the time where my handyman did this and it's not working. Handymen are not trained. Well, there's some handymen that are trained electricians. So there are some that are electricians that are multi-talented.
Yeah.
But just because they say they can do it, obviously this guy thought he could do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, he doesn't know what he's doing, and there's so many things that I can point out here that's wrong. And for the viewers here, you're not electricians, and for the electricians out there, you know what's wrong.
No.
But we got an isolated neutral bar. We've got the neutral wire is actually tied to one of the line 2. Whoever did this should not be doing electrical work.
Yeah.
And I really mean that. I don't think people that don't understand electrical work should do it. You should be trained to do electrical work.
It's not a trade that anyone can just pick up and do.
I'm a contractor, probably. A lot of contractors do a lot of their own work, but they're not qualified electricians.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a big fan in hiring somebody, especially in the specialty trades, that are masters at their trade. I want my house safe. I want my kids safe. I want my family safe. So I'm going to hire a master at that trade.
I forgot. I thought that's in there.
Okay, this is funny. So they needed to take some power off of a power leg. So they drove a screw into a live electrical wire, a big line for a sub feed or something. I think it's probably run into a sub panel or something. And they ran a small wire off of this. Now there's a ton of reasons why this is not a good idea. So that large wire that is tapped into is protected by the proper circuit breaker to protect that size of wire. So it looks like it's probably a 100 amp panel. That looks like maybe a number 2, can't tell on the photo. And it's an aluminum wire, and they can see it looks like aluminum.
And no locks and stuff down.
Yeah. And so they just tapped off of that. Now this wire right here, it looks like it's probably a 14 or 12 gauge wire, and it's now being protected by the breaker that is protecting that wire, which like I said is probably a 100 amp breaker. What that means is whatever they plugged into that red wire, if that were to short out or overload, it will not turn off. It'll just burn. Again, knowing just enough to be dangerous. They understand that's live electricity. They understand that the screw's metal and will conduct electricity, and they understand that they screw into that, it'll take electricity to somewhere else they need it.
Yeah.
It's just enough knowledge to be dangerous, but not smart.